A very warm welcome to part 2 of this video. To get part 1, I've put a link in the description area below. So make sure you go back to part 1. Then you'll know where all this started. So in 2003, when Mwai Kibaki began his term as president, Kenyans were very positive. Many Kenyans believed that this would be the best president Kenya ever had. I don't want to lose you. We are comparing the Mwai Kibaki presidency with a possible DP Ruto presidency. I've gone back in time and described the expectations we had of Mwai Kibaki. And now we're going into what we actually got. President Kibaki started very well. Zero tolerance to corruption. Indeed, there was a memorable story in the East African weekly newspaper published by the Nation Media Group, where it was reported that parastatal heads had turned up at State House with briefcases full of money to give to the president. And Mwai Kibaki had asked them, "What's this money for?" And the president had ordered the parastatal heads to quickly head back to their stations and get to work. This was a working presidency, trying to inspire a working nation. Kenyans were delighted. At long last, we're going to get a proper country which was run properly, and not the Juakali briefcases full of money operation that the previous president had been running. But the Mwai Kibaki administration very quickly ran into some serious problems. And in my view, it is naive to attribute all those problems to his failing to honor the MOU and the problems with the LDP wing of the National Rainbow Coalition. The crux of the problem was a president who was not a politician, pure and simple. A president who was a politician would have easily solved this problem. They'd have sat down and negotiated. Vice President William Kijana Wamalwa was a politician and very close to Kibaki. Had he lived longer, maybe, just maybe, the Kibaki presidency would have ended up very differently. Because maybe he'd have taken a lot of advice from his vice president, whom he was very close to. And so, during the Kibaki presidency, the country called Kenya saw the introduction for the first time of a government spokesperson. The first person to hold that office was Alfred Mutua, the current governor of Machakos County. The president had no time for politics. That's what it was all about. And as political barbs were thrown in the direction of Mwai Kibaki, the president, he ignored them. He was busy working. He was busy implementing all the great ideas he had for Kenya. Because he genuinely wanted to transform the country. But unfortunately, the president is supposed to be a politician. Indeed, the president has to be a very skilled politician or find a way to handle the politics in order to be successful. Because as a president of a democratic country, most of your decisions will have to go through parliament. People have to vote for them. And not only that, you will need political support to push through your agenda, even outside parliament. That is how it works. And so it was not surprising that after a short while, Mwai Kibaki had to look for his predecessor, Moi, and get advice from him on how to run a stable government using Moi tactics. Looking back today, and if we are to be very honest with ourselves, Mwai Kibaki achieved the most any Kenyan president has ever achieved. However, he only achieved a very small fraction, yeah, of what he would have achieved had he been a politician, or had he figured out an effective way of handling the politics. And all this would have been very easy to predict, yeah, had somebody done an analysis of what kind of presidency to expect, yeah, from Mwai Kibaki. Now, with that kind of background and without any emotion, we can now coldly analyze a possible William Samoei Ruto presidency. What kind of company does William Ruto keep? What kind of company has he kept throughout his life so far? I leave you to analyze that for yourself. But in my humble view, yeah, I don't see any characters that would help make a good, wise, effective president. Yeah, and I could be wrong. That's just my view. We also know that William Ruto has a very short fuse. His temper is legendary. But to be fair to him, even Moi had a temper. And in my view, it did not have an impact, yeah, on his presidency or on his ability to lead the country. Yeah. My late political lecturer told me a very fascinating story about Moi's temper that I'd like to repeat here. One day, my political lecturer was urgently called into a meeting in the police commissioner's office. The agenda of the meeting was how to quickly implement a directive from Moi. A certain senior police officer had done something that had made Moi livid. And Moi had ordered the police commissioner, yeah, and I'll quote exactly what Moi said. Nikifika Nakuru, sitaki kusikia huyu nyang'ao kwa polisi. Translation, by the time I get to Nakuru, I don't want to hear that so-and-so is still in the police force. Now, technically, you cannot just fire a senior police officer. There's a process, which ordinarily would take months. Yeah, but Moi had given instructions, yeah, on leaving Nairobi. And by the time this meeting was taking place, he was somewhere in Naivasha. And by the time Moi arrived in Nakuru, you would be sure he would pick up the phone and call the police commissioner and ask him, is so-and-so still in the police force? And if the answer was yes, then that police commissioner would also be out of a job, because Moi was seething with rage. Now, for the sake of the curious, yeah, that problem was solved using a very old, archaic, yeah, aspect that was in the law at that time. And it was simply this. All these senior members of the police force, senior members of government, all served at the pleasure of the president. And therefore, if the president was displeased, if the pleasure for them to serve from the president ended, then that was it. That was the basis, yeah, that was used to do some serious acrobatics to ensure that that police officer was no longer a police officer, yeah, about 2 hours later when Moi arrived in Nakuru. Anyway, the difference between Moi and William Samoei Ruto is the fact that Moi's temper never ever turned violent. The truth is, there are quite a number of instances when the deputy president's temper has turned violent. In the days when he was a mere assistant minister, he fought a man called Ruben Chesire right inside the grounds of State House, Nairobi. Is it a good idea to have the most powerful Kenyan, somebody who has a violent temper? Now, I think it is also fair to look at the performance of this candidate in other positions he has been appointed to. How has he performed? Has he been effective? Can we classify him as a John Michuki or a Fred Matiang'i? Because those individuals are very effective. The late John Michuki was extremely effective. Mwai Kibaki, as finance minister, was very effective. And even when he was given the health portfolio, after being demoted from the vice presidency, Mwai Kibaki still achieved a lot in that ministry. I leave you to answer that question for yourself. You can do some research online if you don't have the facts. So, what would a William Ruto presidency look like? Now, based on the early days of the Uhuru Kenyatta presidency, we know that we'll end up with some very inspired choices for various positions in government. In 2013, we saw for the first time the government of Kenya poaching from corporate Kenya, from the corporate world. And they chose some of the best in the corporate world, managing directors of banks, men and women who had already achieved a lot. And therefore, I think it is fair to expect a lot of very inspired appointments into government from very unexpected places. Some of these appointments have been very effective. Some have not been effective. There are some of those appointees who have never settled into government. We can also expect to see a lot of women appointed to very powerful positions. And the deputy president, unlike Mwai Kibaki, understands the common man very well. He once sold chickens to motorists on the highway. Now, that tells you quite a lot. But the question is, will all these strengths of the deputy president be overshadowed by his weaknesses? As we have seen, the weaknesses of Mwai Kibaki took their toll on his presidency. And indeed, Kenyans paid a very high price for those weaknesses in Mwai Kibaki. Will Kenyans pay an equally high price or even higher for the weaknesses in the character of William Samoei Ruto if he ascends to the presidency? Most people lose their temper, in a way that affects a lot of things they do, and in a way that affects their performance on a job. Because when you lose your temper, emotions take over. And granted, even the wisest leader will have a temper. But the big question here is, how will that temper affect their job as chief executive of the country? But in my view, the biggest concern for those who may want to elect William Samoei Ruto as the next president of Kenya is a very disturbing pattern in his politics. That reminds me many times of Moi tactics. For instance, the way the deputy president rewards political loyalty. It seems to be very similar to the way Moi rewarded those who were politically loyal to him. Most of these characters became fabulously wealthy. Many got big, huge government contracts as a reward for their loyalty to Moi. We have even seen Moism in the way the deputy president is campaigning. There are many people, many analysts, who have pointed to the fact that the deputy president's campaign for the presidency reminds them of the days of Youth for Kanu 92. Youth for Kanu 92 targeted the youths in the country to support the re-election of President Daniel Toroitich arap Moi. We are seeing a very huge similarity in this wheelbarrows campaign. Those of us who were around during the Moi days are also seeing a huge similarity in the use of huge sums of money to achieve political objectives. And just like in the Moi days, the William Samoei Ruto war chest of cash does not seem like it can be exhausted, ever. Now we all know what happened to the youths who supported Moi for election in 1992. They were abandoned after Moi was safely back in State House. This is why I keep on saying on this channel that as boring as history is, it is critical in any analysis of politics. It is critical if anybody wants to start to predict what may happen in the future. There is little doubt that William Samoei Ruto was a keen student of Moi politics. We have even gotten a glimpse of how the deputy president handles political views that are different from his. For example, the deputy president was bang in the middle of the Jubilee response to the opposition during the 2017 presidential elections. And we saw the brutal, ruthless way in which the opposition were dealt with. People lost their lives. And so, is it stretching our imagination to imagine that a Ruto presidency will be very similar to what we saw in 2017? That the opposition and anybody with political views that are different from that of the Ruto presidency will end up being dealt with very ruthlessly? Is that stretching our imagination? There's something else that's also very important to take note of. A presidential campaign is very different from a presidential term in office. When the campaigns are over is when you see the true colors of the person you have elected as president. We saw that very clearly in 2003 and the years that followed when Mwai Kibaki became president. And again, if we go back to the Moi rulebook, Moi once said the following about politics. Siasa ni kama kutongoza mwanamke. Ukishamtongoza na akishafanya vile unataka, bas, mambo yake kwisha. Loosely translated, politics is like seducing a woman. Once you've gotten what you want, that's it. Moi said that. Now, to be fair, that's the nature of politics anywhere in the world. But in my view, when the difference between a campaign, a presidential campaign, and a presidency is too different, miles apart, then it should become a cause for concern for the voters. And that is why I'm very frightened, of what kind of person we will see in President William Samoei Ruto once his campaigns are over and is safely inside State House as president of the country. I urge Kenyans, even supporters of the Deputy President, current supporters of the Deputy President, to think through very deeply the points we have brought forward in this video. Because, as Kenyans have learned the hard way, tribe will not help you. The fact that the president is the same tribe as you will not help you. The fact that you like the person you have elected president will not help you once he's safely inside State House. In the famous words of the late Mwalimu Julius Kabarage Nyerere, founding father and first president of Tanzania, if you like somebody, buy him a cup of coffee, buy him a cup of tea, to show your sheer love for him or her. But never, ever use your love for somebody to make a decision to give them the presidency. If you love somebody, give them a cup of tea, not the presidency. Very wise words indeed. That will definitely stand the test of time. The only thing that is useful to you as a voter, that will help you as a voter, is the character of the person you have decided to elect into office as president. Period. Now, in another future video in the next 2 or 3 days, I will analyze what a Raila Odinga presidency will look like. And just like in this particular series on William Samoei Ruto, I'm not going to take any prisoners. I'm going to say it as it is. And therefore that is something for you to look forward to, whether or not you support Raila Odinga. Until next time, this is Chris Kumekucha.